Thank you. Well, I first want to thank everybody who was involved in the petitioning. There are many things I could say about each one of you. People did heroic work. Heroic. This campaign was much harder than 2 years ago, in my opinion, because of the psychotic presidential election. And I am speaking in understated terms. I don't think in the history of our republic have we had a greater crisis with a less qualified group of candidates. And that is extremely alarming and disconcerting, and you see it in the population because nobody was happy. People are high anxiety and also delusional. All of us met that 1 in 100 fanatical Biden supporter. Who are you supporting for president? And then you'd say, well, I think they're not qualified. Well, do you think Donald Trump could get elected? You'd say, well, you know, I think Biden's gonna, you have no idea. Biden is so underrated. Look at the economy. They're stepping over homeless people who are drug addicted. The economy is fabulous. We're gonna have nuclear war. We're actually about to have nuclear war. We're gonna have nuclear, I mean, it was psychotic. And the Trump supporters, slightly less so, but they wanted to make sure that I wasn't supporting Biden, which was not hard, I'm definitely not. So, but this kind of, as if the election was going to be fair, and as if the President of the United States, unless it were an extraordinary statesman like Lyndon LaRouche or Abraham Lincoln or FDR or John F. Kennedy, unless it were an extraordinary person, in some ways the actual president doesn't matter. It should matter. The reason why they did the coup in the 60s and assassinated Kennedy is because the President of the United States has enormous power. But since the American people decided to allow the Warren Commission cover-up and never got to the bottom of who killed Kennedy, guess what? That's who's been running the country ever since. So we have been blessed or cursed with a situation where anyone who is qualified to be president is not allowed to get anywhere near that office. And that is why I decided to run for US Senate from New York, first against Schumer and now because I figured that was the closest I could get to a presidential campaign in a domain where we had some control, and people know what happened last time. We got the 66,000 signatures, we got on the ballot, they refused to allow me in the debates, and then they stole my vote on television. And we got to watch my vote go from 57,000, which was already a fraud the night of the election, down to 29,000 the next day, down to 25,000 by the end of the week, and it's probably down to minus 15 now. So, as Jose said, it does have to be a movement. Now, before I get too far, I do have to thank a couple people particularly, one of whom is Suzanne. Please. So, very much. And the other person is my husband, Chris. He made a point to set a record of petitioning every single day from beginning to end, not one day in which he did not petition. And besides that, took all of my phone calls and dealt with everything.
And he never got less than 100 a day. I hated it.
That's not true.
I'm
No,
just
that's
kidding.
not
No, there was one day I lost my voice and I only got 50.
So now back to where we are. Why is this so important? Why did we do this? And I want to say a couple things about the process. I don't intend to ever do this again. We have to change the law. This is fascist crap. what people go through, and you see how bureaucracy is the aid of fascism, because nobody really can do this. And although the Kennedy campaign turned in a lot of signatures, they paid a lot of money to people to do it. We are the only campaign that I'm aware of that turned in the number of signatures that we turned in, and I will just say, no, I won't. Let's make the assholes count our petitions. If they want to know how many we turned in, I'll just say it's well over 45,000. We're the only people who did this and did it with the competence and the love and the commitment, because the people in this room know what is at stake and why we have to have a voice. And I will just say that there are we are in a moment of incredible transition. The transatlantic British imperial liberal system is bankrupt, dead, and dying. And because they are weak, that's why they need a dictatorship. That's why they need censorship. That's why they need bureaucracy, which the Board of Elections at Albany is just like Joe Biden's rules-based order, which is they make up the rules, they don't have to explain them to you, and they can change the interpretation whenever they want, and then use that to torture you in various ways. So I don't think the signature requirement in the state even should be 15,000 signatures. I think that people should have access to the ballot, and they should demonstrate they exist by getting a certain number of signatures in half of the counties, maybe 50, maybe 100, something like that. And there should be a standard across the nation. Most people, and we ran into it, you found the voters did not know why they have two vomitacious choices when they go to vote. They don't know why that is, because no one else is allowed on the ballot, because the most qualified people are not allowed on the ballot, and what you're allowed to vote for is a prostitute who is willing to sell their policy to the highest bidder for the purpose of upholding some party line, which is going to lead to the end of civilization. So, this transatlantic system is dead. There is a new system coming into existence which absolutely took its origin from the work of Lyndon LaRouche in the 70s, his commitment to an international development bank, his and Helga's meetings with Indira Gandhi, Lopez Portillo, friends in the non-aligned movement, calls for a debt moratorium. The Russian economist Sergei Glaziev said that every nation that is moving as part of this was influenced by Lyndon LaRouche, and that is true. They represent over half of the world's population, over half of the world's raw materials. That's billions of people, and the only way you're going to stop them is with a nuclear war. You cannot stop 4.5, 5, 6 billion people who have decided to embark on a different policy. And we have people now who are insane enough to risk it, and they also want to make us complicit in their crimes. For example, with the ongoing offensive in Rafah, which is hideous, and the videos of the war crimes being carried out by the IDF, funded by American dollars, are available for everyone to see. And in the United States, we have exactly what you had in Nazi Germany, which is that if you stand against genocide, you are labeled as a terrorist. And we have a Congress where people are proposing that students who are standing, Margaret Sheldon's phone, we're calling out names. That's a $100 campaign contribution. So people who are protesting the genocide rightly, you have congressmen like this Senator Marsha Blackburn saying that they should be put on a no-fly list because they're terrorists. So everything is opposite. IDF soldiers who are committing atrocities are supposed to be getting veterans benefits in the United States. Whereas in South Africa, the foreign minister, Naledi Pandor, announced that any South African who is a dual citizenship and participates in genocide against the people of Gaza will be arrested when they return to South Africa. So think of the difference there. I will say on that we also have a problem, as we had with the anti-Vietnam War movement in the United States, which was infiltrated by the Congress for Cultural Freedom, a project of the CIA, the Tavistock Institute, serving to make people impotent, turning it into the rock, drug, sex, green counterculture to destroy what Martin Luther King embodied, which is a true understanding of the constitutional values of our republic. And we see that in some of these protests, unfortunately, where people don't understand that the United States was created in opposition to the British Empire. They have conflated every kind of peculiar perversion with freedom for the Palestinian people, and it's problematic. So we have to be very clear. The proposal that LaRouche put forward, the Oasis Plan, a two-state solution standing on international law, which is UN Resolution 242, that may not be the final place where you end up, but it's the last thing that exists, and it requires the recognition of a Palestinian state. And Biden cannot run around saying that he's supporting a two-state solution when he will not recognize the legitimacy of a state of Palestine, which will then has to be on equal footing to negotiate how this ends. But most importantly, you have to have development. You have to green the desert. And people have to stand strong in the United States, and it's not enough to be against. You have to have an image of where we're going. Now finally, the Russia situation, and I just wanted to share with you, because as people may know, Jose referenced it, the supposed quote-unquote Ukrainians, we use that term advisedly because everyone knows that Ukraine doesn't do anything without instruction from the MI6 and the US State Department, struck the Armavir early radar, early warning system far into Russia. We also know that yesterday the NATO parliament, whatever that is, had a vote where they agreed in large majority that Ukraine may use the weapons it has sent to shoot as far into Russia as they want, and they can strike any targets that they want in Russia. Now, Russia has been very clear. Unlike the United States, they have a clear doctrine about when they will use nuclear weapons, when they are under existential threat. And in their section on nuclear weapons, section 3, conditions for transition of the Russian Federation for use of nuclear weapons, number 19C says, attack by an adversary against critical governmental or military sites of the Russian Federation, disruption of which would undermine nuclear forces' response actions. So if you destroy a facility that would allow Russia to respond to a nuclear strike, you are crossing the line to the threshold of where they would use a nuclear, where they have announced that a nuclear response is justified. That is why we are saying that we are very close to a nuclear war. That is not for hype. That is not so everyone can be scared, although you should be scared. It is because it is true. And we have people in Washington, D.C. right now who are so arrogant and so deluded that they believe that they can go ahead and cross all these lines, and that Putin is only bluffing, and that Putin, who is beloved by his population, as we saw in the recent Russian elections, is going to be prepared to stand by and allow his nation to be destroyed. And that is not going to happen. So we have to break out in the United States these campaigns. And the last thing I wanted to say is what we did on the petitioning was very effective. Like these pompous egomaniacs, when they design something that is to torture or harm someone else, like the sanctions on Russia, that completely backfired. Russia is very strong, and we are going down the drain. When the Board of Elections decided that Diane Sayre had to get 45,000 ballot signatures to get on the ballot, the Sayre campaign spoke to 300,000 New York voters, got out hundreds of thousands of pieces of literature, and put the campaign on the map, so to speak. Between us, after a few deployments in Manhattan, and we're gonna do a lot in Manhattan, we had done a few days of petitioning in Manhattan, which I was involved in personally, and guess who calls my cell phone? Luckily, I was at a bar, so I couldn't hear them, and I get a text message. Oh, Diane, it's so-and-so from the New York Post. Would you give us a call? So I told Suzanne that I have no intention of talking to them. Would you call up and see what they want? And their cover story was, we want to know if Diane is going to the Democratic Convention. And Suzanne said, why would Diane be going to the Democratic Convention? She's not a Democrat. And they said, well, you know, we saw that she spent $1,000 to go to the Radio City Music Hall event and disrupt the presidents. And if she cares so much about disrupting the presidents, we thought she might be going. Now, when is the Democratic Party convention? August. Do you think the New York Post was really calling to find out whether I was going to disrupt the and do they think they are so, I mean, they could be so stupid, but do they really think that I would tell them if I were planning to go? Oh, gee, you guys are a bunch of disgusting scumbags, but I'd love to let you know what I'm doing in the next few weeks so you can sabotage me. No. But I'm telling you, it is so on the radar screen. No one here should underestimate in any way what we are doing. How many people here observed or were told of people who were videotaping our petitioning deployments? Okay, and if you didn't know, maybe, I don't know, but people were videotaping. Become more alert. People were video. How many people know about the Democratic Party official who loves us so much he signed our petition 7 times?
Oh, yeah.
Making a point to go to different, 8 times, okay, to go to a different witness every single time. Okay, thinking.
Who's that?
Yep.
We'll discuss it later, but it'll be revealed. No, so we know that we are hurting them, but our intention, as a friend said once, was not to worship Satan, but to kill Satan. Our intent is to destroy this apparatus. So coming out of here, we are going to be doing banner deployments, street deployments, field deployments. I have in that box my plan, America's Next 50 Years. We have to have the image of what the United States will do when it joins the Belt and Road, when we come back to our revolutionary identity. And we spend lots of money on researching fusion energy, and we build finally the high-speed rail corridor through the state of New York, and Jose Vega leads a renaissance in the Bronx to recruit thousands of young people to work on the space program. And to really rub it in, I want to campaign all up and down Broadway in Manhattan for the Oasis plan. So please take a breath, eat, and then get ready. That's right, gird your loins for the next phase of the campaigns, in which we actually have to win whether we control what happens with the election or not, we have to win the policy, because if we don't, none of us may be here to commemorate Memorial Day in the future. Thank you.